it's a tricky spot because depending on what you're targeting, Google will actually penalize you for having those keywords that you're trying to actively target because Google does not like cannabis just in general.
And I want a good show, damn it. Ready for a good show?
Doing awesome, yeah. I'm excited to talk to you, Angie. Thank you for having me.
Yes!
I've always been really big into archery, and my dad said, hey, you guys want to start an archery store?
Yes, that's how it was.
Yes, of course, let's do this together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the E-Comm Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ecomm Show. I'm your host, as usual, Andrew Maff, and today I am joined by the amazing Chris Fontes, who is the founder and CEO over at High Spirits Beverages. Chris, how you doing? You ready for a good show?
I'm so excited about this. Thanks for having me on.
I am so excited too. Easily one of my favorite topics or favorite industries to have on the show because of the complexities. But I digress. I have to do the standard, the usual. Let's pretend no one knows who you are and give us a little bit of insight into your background, where you started, where you're at now at High Spirits, and we'll take it from there. Okay?
Yeah, certainly. So I was the first guy to figure out that you could use THC from hemp and ship it through the mail. So my background in this space starts a little bit before that. For the sake of this show, I'll skip some of the precursor of me being in the industry. But suffice to say, I'd entered the space, had a couple false starts with some other business models and some bad partners, transitioned into consumer packaged goods, was selling hemp flower online. And at the time, this is where I'll maybe start my backstory a little bit. At the time, hemp flower online was roll of the dice if you got what looked like hay or what looked like cannabis. And very few people were properly curing their flower and taking a good job and telling you what you were even buying, where it came from, COAs, et cetera. So we created an online direct-to-consumer marketplace where we would work with farmers across the country. We would vet their product to make sure it was high quality, it was cured properly, it had that traditional cannabis flower smell, taste, feel. Then we'd get it independently tested ourselves to make sure it was legal and it was clean. There wasn't heavy metals, arsenic, garbage like that in the product. Then we would brand that product and that farm that grew that product on their own page and talk about this is greenhouse grown, it's done by these folks, this is their ethos and philosophy. And so they could get brand awareness around the farm itself and get excited about, hey, I really like this farm's stuff. Anything they do, I'm going to buy. We did that for a while. And Delta 8 came on the market. And I'd known about Delta 8 a little bit beforehand because of how entrenched in the industry I am. And, Delta 8 wasn't for us. Ultimately, I talked to a couple chemists. This was very early on in Delta 8. No one had really consumed it really in any considerable amounts. And for us, I was like, we're just not going to, it's too iffy for me. There's too many unknowns. I'm not willing to put humans through a human trial so I can make revenue off of it. Yeah. And no, I'm not throwing shade to any D8 company, just where we were at the time and the time in the industry, it wasn't right for us. So previously, my exposure to hemp had me really understanding the regs and the legislation, et cetera, of both states and federal. And so I'd identified the 0.3% Delta 9 option early on, and now finally had an opportunity to execute it. We were getting a lot of calls about D8 flower, and we weren't going to do that. And so we said, we got to do something. We're losing revenue because people aren't buying just hemp flower anymore unless it's covered in D8. So we thought, let's make a gummy. Let's make a D9 gummy that can actually be shipped. And D9, for audience members that may not know, is regular THC. Like if you go into a dispensary in Colorado and you get product, it's going to be D9 THC. That's what cannabis has always made. So we figured out 0.3 allows you plenty of milligrams to have a 10 milligram edible and a regular size, slightly bigger than regular size gummy. And we immediately got that product tested. Was certified in the state of Utah because we figured if Utah will approve this as a hemp product and certifies it, then anyone will think it's okay. And then we got the USPS to whitelist us and say, yeah, this is a legal hemp product. We can't stop you from shipping it. And they added us to a whitelist, so they'd quit seizing our packages. So lo and behold, Trojan Horse Cannabis was launched. It was the first Delta 9 THC company in the space. Now, obviously, Delta 9's everywhere, and we're really proud to be the pioneers and the spearhead on that movement. Follow that up about a year and a half later. I read the book, The Power of Habit, and I realized that gummies are great, but people that are currently alcohol consumers and not cannabis consumers might not switch to gummies because it's a totally different thing. They might not switch to flower because it's a totally different thing. And a lot of people that don't currently smoke cannabis are nervous about inhalation in general. And I thought, you know what? Instead of trying to change their habit, I'm just going to replace an item in their habit. And I'm going to take the can out of their hand and put a cannabis can in their hand instead. And thus we launched High Spirits Beverages, one of the first hemp-derived THC beverage companies in existence. So that's our primary focus. We do still have Trojan Horse as a brand. We do still run and sell gummies off TrojanHorseCannabis.com. We also sell our High Spirits Beverages off of TrojanHorseCannabis.com. And we've been in the space a while. Additionally, just for the reference here, I'm the co-chair of policy for the National Industrial Hemp Council, co-chair of policy at Hemp Beverage Alliance, co-chair of policy Cannabis Beverage Alliance or Association, and I'm on the director for the Colorado Hemp Association. So I'm pretty locked into regulation.
So you don't know what you're doing at all.
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just guessing. I'm failing. I mean, the truth is none of us really do. There's gradients of how much we do or don't know, but
wow.
But yeah, so that's me.
So the overall concept of the product is your goal to go after people that are traditionally, maybe they are more like, I'm more of an alcohol guy, but if I want to give this a shot, you're kind of going after the people that enjoy drinking and going after them with the high spirits beverage, correct?
Generally speaking, yeah. So Trojan Horse is more, we'll say, stoner centric, high frequency, higher tolerance users. We've got a live resin gummy that's actually made with live resin from hemp. That's 30 milligrams of D9 per gummy, right? So that's a more high frequency, high tolerance consumer product. Yeah. High Spirits is being distributed through beer distributors to bars, restaurants, liquor stores, C-stores, these sorts of things. As such, that demographic doesn't exactly translate very well. So beer distributors are not going to be comfortable selling 50 and 100 milligram cans. They just won't. Liquor stores are going to be really nervous about it. So that market is a 5 and 10 milligram market right now. And so inherently, we're limited to a psychographic of an individual that's more curious or more occasional. And we find a lot of our consumers are alcohol drinkers who are looking for a different option, or they haven't drank alcohol in a long time, but they're still, we'll say, addicted to alcohol and they crave it constantly. And it's a daily fight for them, right? And so for those people, they jump on and all of a sudden they get a can, they feel impaired, but it's not addicting like alcohol. It doesn't have the negative side effects. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I can drink again. This is amazing. And they can go out and have a good time with their friends and go to the bar and have a drink without, suffering the consequences.
How many milligrams is in each can?
So we have 4 SKUs, 2 of them. Well, we actually have 5 SKUs. One is 50 milligrams. That one we don't sell through beer distributors. It typically goes to smoke shops and direct to consumer. Yeah. We have 2 10 milligram and 2 5 milligram cans. Both of those are direct to consumer as well as through distributors and direct to wholesale.
Now, if you go into a shop, the usual, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong here, but aren't they usually sold like, 5, 10 milligram gummies for the most part? Then you can get a little bit higher for, someone with a higher tolerance. So you still are, each can really is still kind of catering to like, you'll feel it. Like it's not going to be like, you're not crushing a bunch of these with the boys kind of thing, right?
It depends. It depends on the person and their own tolerance. Everyone reacts a little different. But with the 5 milligrams, especially, something that's unique about drinks versus other cannabis products, and this is going to go a little sciencey, so pardon the boring speak here, but when you inhale through flower combustion or through vape or dabbing, when you inhale THC, you're inhaling Delta 9 THC, and it goes into your lungs as Delta 9, and it stays Delta 9 in your blood. By the time it binds to your CB1 receptors, it's Delta 9. When you ingest, meaning you eat an edible and it goes into your stomach, anything that goes into your stomach is processed just like all other food is, which means there's enzymes and there's reactions and things convert. So you eat Delta 9 THC, but your liver converts it to 11-hydroxy delta 9 THC. That is a different compound, and it feels different. And for, I'd say, the vast majority of people, they can't really tell the difference in high between inhalation or edibles. Some people, it's a drastic difference, though. Like my wife, for example, can hit my live resin vape cart, no problem, and take a good couple rips and be fine. 2 milligrams is her max for edibles. Otherwise, she has a horrible time. And so we find some people have these weird reactions to edibles. And in drinks, in order to get the cannabis oil to homogenize, break apart evenly, and stick to and not move in the beverage itself, we have to emulsify it. And in the process of emulsifying it, we're also making the particle size much smaller. So it's called nano. Essentially, the molecule, the THC molecules go from like 1,000 nanometers to like 40 nanometers. And what that does is those molecules are small enough that they bypass phase 1 metabolization, meaning they go right into your bloodstream as delta 9. And it kicks in faster. So instead of taking a gummy and waiting an hour and being like, I don't feel anything, and taking a second one, then that first one kicks in and you're like, oh shit. Sorry, I don't know if swearing's okay on your audience.
No, you're good. It's all right.
Yeah, you have that moment where you're like, oh no, that first one's kicking my ass now, and the second one's an hour behind it. With drinks, you feel it in like 10 to 15 minutes, just like you would alcohol. So you can adjust your own experience a little bit easier. Additionally, going back to your concept of timing, you could crush a bunch of these 5 megers. Why? Because it kicks in fast and it wears off fast. It's about 2 hours. So you can drink one, and then the next hour you drink a second one, and you're really only at like a 10 milligram at a time high. And every hour you can drink another one. It's the same thing, like one beer, 1 hour, right? That whole concept of when are you drunk, when are you not drunk. You can have like 1 5 milligram an hour and probably be relatively okay. And if you want to go harder, maybe you pick it up a little bit. Maybe you have 2 an hour. But you can monitor your own experience, and you can still crush 6 to 8 drinks in a night, even if you don't have a high tolerance.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's talk about the thing that I always find most interesting about, this type of industry. You can't really do anything. They don't really let you do much of shit to market this product. So it's always very interesting to me, specifically in like, the CBD, THC world is definitely even more highly regulated and just annoying because every state has their own rules. So obviously someone like yourself who knows policy inside and out is very beneficial to have on the team. But what has your approach been, getting it off the ground? How are you marketing it? What's working the best? What's not working? Like, give me a little bit of insight into that.
Oh man, that's a wide open question. Okay, so what doesn't work? Most traditional paid channels don't work.
Yeah.
You can't run paid ads on Google. You can, but you get caught eventually, and you're at risk of losing your ability to ever run Google ads again. So I really stay away from Google ads. Facebook ads, Instagram ads, there is a method to do this. And essentially what you have to do is have a landing page that appears to be an educational information landing page that's been scrubbed of keywords that Meta would flag, like THC, CBD, cannabis, stuff like that. And you run an ad. Your ad has to be free of all that as well. Then that ad goes to that landing page that doesn't actually have anything for sale, that is scrubbed clean. Then when someone clicks like shop now or buy now, it redirects to your website where you actually have actual e-commerce transactions taking place and you're properly marketing the product.
Yeah.
Even in doing all of these hoops and these jump arounds, the return isn't great right now unless you throw a lot of money at it. A lot of our competitors are spending between 50 and 100 grand a month on Meta ads to make this channel work for them. And if you have that kind of cash to go right to one channel, it can work. But if you don't, you're kind of throwing money in the garbage. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense for most smaller e-commerce folks to play this game because it's just too expensive with not enough return. So there's an option. YouTube has some options. I don't know how many people in your audience are familiar with Traffic Junkie, but they're an adult website ad platform. They will take anything, basically, as I'm sure everyone's aware of. But the return there has been garbage. And I think it's kind of obvious as to why people aren't there to buy gummies. They're there to do other things. And that's what they do. So there are options, but not a lot of great ones. What has seemed to work a little bit more consistently, one is good old fashioned social engagement, like physically putting in the time to get your Facebook account, Reddit account, Instagram account, interact with other people, be part of the community, answer questions, engage with your customer base, and you will pick up customers that way better than most other ways. There's a couple other options out here with really complex geo-targeting and mobile ID targeting and things of this nature that we've played with. We haven't had great success yet, but one thing that's promising for us, which is really super interesting, is we're tied to two different companies that can do this for us. And what they do essentially is they buy access to these massive databases that are basically full of mobile IDs and geocache or geolocation information. Then they have other databases that are massive that have those same mobile IDs tied to actual information, email address, phone number, etc. And these are all opted in things, right? Someone does a survey on Facebook. Oh, what kind of cat are you? Right? And they put in their information and they don't realize they've opted into one of these mega aggregators where all their data goes out in this database. Well, we can use those multiple databases to do cross-reference targeted email lists. So for example, one thing we did was I put a geo fence around a couple dispensaries in a marijuana legal state. And then I filtered that out by anyone that's been in here in the last 90 days, but their home address is in a state where marijuana is not legal. Then we were able to direct target those email people as, hey, tired of flying out of state to buy your gummies? You can buy online, right? And we had some success with that. I think we need to tweak it a little bit, but it's very promising. And you can just imagine, I'm sure everyone listening to this that either knows about this already or is just learning about it has their wheels turned on like, oh yeah, I could use that for a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah.
So that works. Direct mails, emails through other. In fact, all of the folks that own e-commerce businesses that are listening to this right now, we're always looking to partner with other e-commerce businesses that have large volumes of customers that often promote other products for fees. That we found that works with us pretty well, especially if it's non-competitive but adjacent to our category and vice versa. We've used direct mailers through like men's interest magazines and women's interest magazines and stuff like that. So direct email campaigns seem to work pretty good. Influencers work well. They're kind of difficult to work with sometimes. I'm sure everybody listening has dealt with influencers in one shape or another. That we could probably do a whole show just on how to properly leverage influencers and how not to. But that's worked out pretty well.
So have you tried, trying to think of all the stuff you just listed, what about a couple of things I didn't hear, anything from an SEO side or I guess you would refer to as like content paid marketing, so using like a Taboola or something like that or Outbrain? Like, have you tried anything in that direction?
Not a ton, and it's kind of embarrassing because I used to run a marketing agency. I'm old enough that the term inbound marketing was created when I was an adult, right? HubSpot coined that term. They had this whole concept of SEO existed before that, but this concept of inbound marketing really solidified around HubSpot. And I started an agency that basically would do what HubSpot did, but on a WooCommerce platform. I'm a previous software engineer, so built a plugin. There's a light CRM, drip campaigns, lead scoring, these sorts of things. And provided a service to also, as an agency, like physically we'll create your content, whatever you want. So I know a ton about SEO. Although to be fair, I knew a ton about SEO 5 years ago, and the space moves so fast, I'm probably out of touch, but I know a lot about it, but we don't leverage it a ton. And it's a tricky spot because depending on what you're targeting, Google will actually penalize you for having those keywords that you're trying to actively target, because Google does not like cannabis just in general. So for example, in Project Hempflower, we relied on SEO really heavily, and we were doing at the time, not a lot, probably like 15 grand to 20 grand a month just on organic SEO sales. And then 1 month it went to like 2 grand and it was just dead. And we did a bunch of digging and we found out in an algorithm update, they started penalizing cannabis companies and throwing them to the bottom of the SERPs. So it was like, why put all this SEO effort into it when Google's going to actively fight against us? And I think that's eased up a little bit now, but we just haven't re-engaged.
Yeah, from a restricted brands kind of thing, like we've seen that, we definitely saw that happen, a big drop in I think it was March of 2023, actually. Big one that just knocked everyone out, and now it's already like you can see it's already starting to come back. But now the approach is like, how do we focus on keywords that are for the solution that this specific product
Yeah.
provides, not the actual product? So it's like you're still like kind of on that fine line of trying to figure it out. I mean, the whole concept, the whole industry is very catered towards anything you can do towards or traditional organic like content marketing, whether it's social media and engaging with people and influencer marketing and creating articles and becoming a thought leader in the space and just getting on as many podcasts as you possibly can. Like it's a serious hustle of creating a ton of assets to get it out there. Now, the thing that I love about this industry as well, which you already kind of alluded to in the beginning, everything really comes down to word of mouth in this industry, more so than anything else, because you really can't rely on anything.
Yep.
But it's also very clear that people like yourself that stand out in the industry because the just obscene amount of research that you do to make sure like it's a quality product and there's a reason it's made the way it is and you're not getting dealt anything horrible, because that's how it's just an immediate, like, no one wants to use that brand anymore. And the only thing you can rely on is word of mouth. So it makes a lot of sense that you would focus so heavily on the product side. So going into, the new year, like what is the thing that you're like, all right, we're going to pour some gas on this and see what it does?
We are creating more content. The content's tricky though, because, like you said, focusing on what it does for you as opposed to what it is really beneficial in this style of marketing and workarounds in this space. But it's also tricky because the FDA says, well, you can't say it actually helps you, right? Don't say that, because then we're going to come after you for that. So it's like you're trying to sell the value proposition without talking about the value. So it's more like you're going to have a great day, right? You had a stressful week. This is going to help you. But you can't say anxiety. Use the term anxiety on your website. FDA is going to ding you and put you out of business. And so you're always walking this tightrope of, there's what the product is, there's what it does for you. And we're like somewhere in between, like riding this razor thin edge of, we want to tell you what it does for you without telling you what it does for you. So we are experimenting with a better copy in multiple different channels for that. But this year on the e-commerce side, which I'll focus on for the intent of the podcast, we're really focusing on influencers, more social engagement, and some of these direct mailers, because I think that's going to produce the fastest ROI, while SEO is a little slower, but it's evergreen and it's more stable long term. But these industries are exploding, and right now it's a game of how fast can you grow before you get left in the dirt. And so it's high return potential is what we're pushing for primarily right now. Yeah.
I love to hear the direct mail part, because I know there's so many people that are going to listen to this podcast and they're just going to be like, ugh, I can't believe people are sleeping on direct mail. I actually think it can work. It works so well because no one does it. There's so little competition now that even in Q4, I was shocked. I got like nothing in the mail comparative to what I've gotten in years past. And now they've got there's several different platforms, a couple which we use that like integrate with stuff like a Klaviyo. So it's like you can do like abandoned cart mailers and like customer win back mailers and just automate some of that stuff.
Who's that? Do you mind?
One of the ones we use is Postalytics.
Okay.
They can integrate, and there's another one. I'll look it up and I'll put it in the show notes and stuff too. I can't remember their name. It's another I'm pretty sure it's another Post something. I'll look it up. I'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, that type of stuff I love, because it's hitting them at the right time. You've got email that automates. Obviously, you've got SMS that started to pick up over the past few years, and then now if you actually factor in automating direct mailers, I love it. I think they work great.
Yeah, I agree. And it is slept on. It's fairly inexpensive too. People don't realize how cheap it is actually. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cheap. I mean, you end up doing sort of like a spray and pray, so it can get expensive if you're not careful, but you can test markets out for real inexpensive. You mentioned SMS. I'll mention this as well. A fun part of our industry is when you just randomly don't have access to something you had access to that morning. So, for example, we were using PayPal, and we were trying to be really discreet about how we were using PayPal. And we used it for about 1.5 years. And then not only did they catch on, but it was not even a warning. It was, hey, you were doing this. You're permanently banned from ever having a PayPal account ever again. Thanks to my social. So I can't ever use PayPal ever again. I'm no longer allowed as a person to ever run a Facebook ad ever again. So I have to have other people do it for me because I can't physically do it myself. Yeah. The most recent one was SMS. So we were using Ring Central for our VoIP provider and SMS provider. And our website is TrojanHorseCannabis.com. Cannabis is in the name. So people would say to our sales reps, hey, what's your email address? And they'd reply, oh, I'm Eric.Backus at TrojanHorseCannabis.com. Well, that happened enough that the FCC got involved and told Ring Central to shut us down. So we just didn't have SMS one day and we couldn't get it back. There was no appeals. There was no like, hey, this is all legal products. We're not selling marijuana. It's hemp-based cannabis. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. The FCC says you can't say this and you said it. So that's all there is to it. So we had to completely change providers to get a second shot at SMS sending. And that's not just like, Klaviyo, this is like integrated into our salespeople. It's our customer service line that people call in. It was a big deal. So we had to drop everything and completely port our numbers over and shift over the course of a month. And it affected our business in a huge negative way because we had people texting in orders that we weren't getting the text and we didn't know who was texting us. They didn't get any replies saying this person's no longer receiving texts or anything like that. It just went into a black hole. So yeah, things are complex.
Yeah, that stuff is so frustrating and ridiculous. Like I know sometimes like I'll, wake up, I'll sit down and be like, this collapsed, this broke or something. It's like, I got to work on fixing this. And like, within a day or so you get it fixed and it's fine. It is what it is. But in your industry, oh my God, it's like every week something new is taken down and you can't get back, and getting it back is a nightmare. It's not like a quick fix. Like, every time I have anyone in this industry on this podcast, I'm always like, man, so much power to you. The brands we work with in this area, it's so like every day it's just like, oh, this is broken now. So we got to fix this and see if we can get back on. If not, we got to figure out another workaround. And it's definitely a challenge. So it makes it interesting, but it is also,
I'll tell you, it really is sort of a crucible of marketing prowess. Right? Because there's the tried and true methods that you just don't have access to. So you have to get like guerrilla creative and go, well, what can I do? There's humans out there. I'm a human. How can I get my product in front of those humans and get them excited about it without all of the traditional tools that normally people do use? And I tell you, if you can run a successful business in this space, there's pretty much you can run any business because it doesn't get harder than this.
Yeah.
I even think with firearms, adult toys, those are difficult too, but they have clear-cut rules, right? At least
they're nationwide.
And they're nationwide. You know what the rules are. If you cross the line, you're in trouble. You don't cross the line, you're fine. Cannabis is more gray area. Like we don't really have direct rules for you to follow, but if we don't like what you're doing randomly, we're going to shut you down. And so there's no playbook even to try to avoid getting shut down.
Yeah. Very complicated. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you're super busy, but I'd love to give you an opportunity, let everyone know where they can find out more about you and, of course, more about High Spirit.
Yeah, check me out on LinkedIn. That's where I'm personally the most active, and I share lots of tidbits of regulatory and industry stuff all the time. So LinkedIn, Chris Fontes. Separately, TrojanHorseCannabis.com is where you can find our products. HighSpiritsBeverages.com is our sort of clean landing page for high spirits. And look forward to catching up with some of you offline.
Beautiful. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. Everyone who tuned in, of course, thank you as well. Please make sure you do the usual: rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff on whichever podcast platform you prefer, or head over to the ecommshow.com to check out all of our previous episodes. But as usual, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you all next time. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ecomm Show. Head over to ecommshow.com to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on the BlueTuskr YouTube channel. The Ecomm Show is brought to you by BlueTuskr, a full-service digital marketing company specifically for e-commerce sellers looking to accelerate their growth. Go to BlueTuskr.com now for more information. Make sure to tune in next week for another amazing episode of The Ecomm Show.